Lincoln in Reverse project utilizes repetition structures of do while and or do until. It consists of a text box on the left in which I have pasted the text of the Gettysburg Address, a button that when clicked will take that text on the left, remove any commas, periods, and carriage return line feeds, and then reverse the order of the words from that which is on the left and places it in the text box on the right. So our interface is really simple. It's two text boxes, one on the left, one on the right. Both of them have the multi-line property set to true, and a scroll bar of vertical, and then a button in between. And then I added a picture box with an image I created of Abraham Lincoln looking in the rearview mirror of an automobile. The project will also utilize some string methods of string.index, in which we can find the location of all the periods and the commas and the carriage return line feed characters. We'll use the remove method to get rid of those characters, and then again use IndexOf to find the spaces in a loop, and using Substring to extract the word from the previous space to the current space as we go through the text from beginning to end. I try to always give real-world projects in this practicum course, and this might seem like a really silly project. When would you want to reverse the text of the Gettysburg Address? And that's true. However, the techniques we're employing here of using the repetition structures to isolate each word and do something with it, and using the string methods and accomplishing that inside a loop, are techniques that you might use in a large language model program, such as translating a body of text from one language to another, or in a chatbot with artificial intelligence. So while the project itself seems silly, the techniques we're employing here are very valid. Let me show you the application running. I start with the Gettysburg Address being pasted into a text box that has its multi-line property set to true and a scroll bar that's vertical. I click the button here of put it in reverse, and we get the Gettysburg Address now in the reverse order of words, with any periods, commas, and carriage return line feed characters removed in the process. Since it's a text box, I can change the text in a text box. Pretty simple. So the text I entered is my dog has fleas. Now so does my cat. I'm going to click the put it in reverse, and so now I get cat my does, so now fleas has dog my. So it's the reverse order without any periods or commas. Let me walk you through the algorithm of the button. Here's a flowchart of the process I went through to code the button. I'm going to start by declaring some variables. I have a string variable called address. That's going to be the text of the text box on the left-hand side. Reversed will be the text that goes into the right-hand side. I'm going to declare some integer variables of space lock. That'll be the location of the space. The start index will be where we start each word from. And next removal will be the character index of the character I want to remove as we get rid of the periods, the commas, and the carriage return line feeds. For the input, address is going to equal txtaddress.text, and I want to put a space after that because we're going to be looking for each space to isolate the word. I want to end with a space to make sure I get the last word. I'm going to convert address to all lowercase, and then I'm going to look for the first location of a period in address and put that index into next removal. As long as that next removal is not -1, meaning it found a space, I'm going to remove, as part of a do while loop, remove the next removal character from the address and reassign the result to address. So it's going back to address. Remember, strings are immutable. We can't change the string, but we can reassign the string value. Then I'm going to look for the next location of another period and put that index in the next removal, and it loops back. As long as that's not a -1, we'll repeat the process. Once it's a -1, we're going to progress out of that loop, and we come into another loop. Here I did a do until. You could do a do while. You can interchange these, but so I'm looking for the first location of a comma in the address, and as long as that is not a -1, we're going to remove the comma and reassign the value to address, and then find the next comma, just as we did with the periods. Then I want to look for a CRLF in the address. That's the carriage return line feed. So I'm looking for the first location of that, even though it's 2 characters. Once I find that beginning index, I'm going to remove the next 2 characters, so it would be both the carriage return and line feed, and reassign that back to address, and then look for the next location of a carriage return line feed. Having gone through those 3 loops, and then using another loop, I'm going to find the location of the first space, and as long as that is not a -1, we're going to extract the substring from the address of start index, which we set as 0 up at the top. For the number of characters using substring, it's going to be space lock minus the start index plus 1 number of characters. That's going to extract each word and the space, and we're going to put that in front of the current value of reversed. Then I want to set start index equal to space lock plus 1, so I want the character after the space, and then find the next location of a space. And as long as that next location is not a -1, as far as the index, we'll keep repeating that process. That should put all the words in the reversed variable in reverse order, and I'm going to display that as output in our txt_reversed.txt. Here are the project instructions provided for you. You see this aligns within the course about using repetition structures. And as I mentioned before, while it's a silly exercise, it does meet the techniques that we might encounter in a large language model application. Screenshot, the assignment itself. I start with the Gettysburg Address. You could do something else, but I think that's a good place to start. That's why I named this Lincoln in reverse. Give you some tips. So the first tip is to place a space after the end of the text, so we have an ending space to extract that last word. And then you use do while and do until loops to get rid of the periods, the commas, and the carriage returns. I'll give you some tips on how to do that. So we'll create the GUI. Again, it's a very simple GUI. We have a picture box at the top. A text box on the left is named txt address. The text box on the right I named it txt reversed, and then a button named btn reverse. I didn't create a storyboard because this is really a pretty simple GUI application. You're going to code your project using the tips that I provided you, and then test and debug, make sure it works. And then finally, I provided the flowchart at the end of the assignments. I'm going to suggest you pause here, try this on your own, and then come back and I'll show you my code review. Let's take a look at the code for the put it in reverse button. I have my variables of space lock as an integer. That's going to be the location of our space as we go through the loop extracting each word. I'm going to start with index of 0 for the first word. Address is going to be equal to the text of txt address. I'm going to convert that to lowercase. And then reverse will be a null string to start with. That will be all the words in reverse order. Next, I want to remove the periods. I'm going to dim next removal as an integer. It's going to equal address.indexOf, and I'm looking for a period. Here's my first loop. Do while next removal does not equal -1. Address will equal address.remove. The character I want to remove is next removal, and I want to remove 1 character. Then I'm going to look for another period. So next removal equals address.indexOf, and that will continue the loop until all the periods are gone. Removing the commas is the exact same thing, except the index of for next removal is a comma rather than the period. And I also changed that within the loop. Otherwise, the loop is the same, except for I used a do until here. Whereas before I said do while next removal does not equal -1, here I use a do until next removal does equal -1. So as long as it's not a -1, it'll keep looping. It has the same impact as the do while. Do the same thing for carriage return line feed. I'm looking for the vbCrLF for my index of. Remember, that's 2 characters. It's the carriage return and a line feed. Each of those are separate characters. So as long as it's finding an index, I'm going to remove next removal, but I'm removing 2 characters, the comma 2 there. And then looking for the next vbCrLF. That removes the periods, the commas, and the carriage return line feeds. Now we're ready to extract the words and put them in reversed order. Space lock equals address.indexOf. I'm looking for a space. Do while space lock does not equal -1. Reversed is going to equal the address.substring. I'm going to do start index, comma, space lock minus start index plus 1. That's the number of characters. So we're starting at the end of the word, subtracting the beginning index, and adding 1. And I'm going to add that to the value of reverse. So I do a little concatenation here. The reason I didn't do an ampersand equals, I want this to be before reverse, not after it. Start index then is going to equal space lock plus 1. So I'm going to start with the character after the extraction. And we'll look for another space location using IndexOf. But here I'm going to start with the location of start index. As long as it keeps finding spaces, that loop will keep running. Once it's done, we're going to take the value reversed and assign it to txtReversed.text property. Pretty simple code when you think about it. I counted up, if you take out the comment lines, I think there's 27 lines of functional code here. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.